Hi everybody, and welcome to the 2024 Granny Stitch Sampler Blanket. A beautiful blanket made up of 12 squares designed by 12 of my favorite crochet designer friends. So the first square to be released is my Wagon Wheel Square, like so. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about it so that you know what you are going to be making. I don't know if you know this about me, but I've been experimenting with ways to modify a traditional granny square. This square is one of those experiments, and I've absolutely fallen in love with it, and I hope you do too. So let me tell you a little bit about this square. First of all, some of the things that you're going to be encountering with this square. It takes a circle and it becomes a square as you work your way out. So it starts with a few rounds of a flat circle. You'll be working double crochets. You'll be working some clusters here, and you'll be working a round of double crochets and chain spaces there. Once you get to round 5, that's where you start to build out this square. So in round 5, you start working some stitches of differing heights. There are double crochets, there are there are half double crochets, single crochets, and then I have puff stitches in the corners to give it a little bit of interest there and texture. That builds out the square. And then once you get to that square shape in round 5, after that, you're going to be working the granny stitch. Now remember, this blanket is based on variations of the granny stitch. It's using the traditional granny square shape and using that granny stitch with other stitches and techniques to create these unique squares. So that's where mine comes in. When you get to round 6, you'll be working a granny stitch. In the next round, I work double crochet 3s together over the tops of those granny stitches, because that creates a stitch pattern that I've used in other designs called the modern granny stitch. So it looks like those double crochet 3 double crochets 3 together, looks like an inverted granny stitch. So it looks like a granny stitch on top of an inverted one. So once you get past that, we do a round of half double crochets, and followed by half double crochets worked in the 3rd loop. Now you're going to be working everything from the right side of your square. So when you get to that round of half double crochets in the 3rd loop, you have to look on the back side. You have to kind of pull it toward you to see where that 3rd loop is. But that creates that wonderful ridge across the surface of your square. It almost looks like surface crochet, but it's an easy way to get that effect on your square. Once you get to that point, you're repeating a couple of rounds, granny stitch round and the double crochets 3 together. Once you do that again, you're going to finish off the entire square with a round of single crochets. Now I do that for every one of my squares, especially when I'm putting them together in a blanket or something larger with more than one component, because it gives my square a nice even edge to seam together with other squares. So you'll notice that final round of the square is single crochets around. All of this is explained in the pattern, whether you use the free version online or you buy the pattern or you get it in the larger full pattern for the sampler blanket. All of that will be in the pattern. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the yarn that I chose. First of all, you can use any worsted weight yarn that you like. If you're doing the square for the Granny Stitch sampler blanket, you'll want to choose an array of yarns that sit right in the middle of the worsted weight range. So we know that we have light worsted weights that are almost like DK weight, and we have heavy worsted weights that are usually called Aran weights. Now, the yarn that I chose is actually called an Aran weight, but it sits right in the middle of that worsted weight because the yarn is made in England. they call worsted weight Aran weight. So that's why the confusion. Sorry, I probably said too much and really confused you, but make sure you choose a yarn that's right in the center of that worsted weight range, and that will work perfectly for your blanket. So I used one of my favorite yarn companies is Paint Box Yarns. I get all of mine through the Love Crafts website, but there are other United States distributors that you can get it from. The particular yarn that I used for the blanket is called Wool Mix Aran, and it's a beautiful mix of acrylic and wool. Now, I don't particularly like wool yarn except for merino wool, which would be way too expensive for this blanket. So I find a wool mix, either wool and acrylic or wool and cotton, that kind of tamps down that scratchy feature of the wool. But I really loved working with the Paint Box Yarns Wool Mix Aran because it offers a great alternative to just that pure wool yarn. I've also made this square in Lion Brand's Heartland. That's what you see here. This isn't the actual square from the blanket that I made. This is a new square. And I love Heartland because it's a beautiful 100% acrylic yarn, gorgeous sheen. It's very soft to work with, very easy to work with. I've never had any trouble getting gauge with it, and it works perfectly with the hook that I chose for this particular square. All right, now that we've talked a little bit about the yarn, let's talk about the hook. So we as designers tend to gravitate toward our favorite hooks, our favorite yarns, and that's what you'll see in a lot of our designs. So if you've done any of the other designs that I've made, you'll notice that I use a size H hook a lot. That's a 5mm for those of you who don't use the US system. I just love the way it feels in my hand. I primarily work with DK weight yarns and worsted weight yarns, and it's the perfect weight hook or perfect size hook for working with those yarns for the way that I crochet. So for this square and the yarn that I chose, I used a size H 5mm hook. I feel like it keeps those stitches compact enough that it gives the square stability. The stitches are not too loose, and they're definitely not too tight. But if you happen to be someone who, as a regular, on a regular basis, you tend to crochet a little looser, you might want to go down a hook, or if you crochet fairly tight, you might want to go up a hook. So just kind of experiment. You don't want your square to buckle, even when you're going from that circle to the square. It might take you a round or two to get that square to lay flat, but eventually you shouldn't have to block out any bunching, and that has to do with your hook size. I do have a gauge in the pattern. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I usually, it's usually a round or two or three that you measure across, so that the center of the square is right in the middle of that measurement. So pay close attention to that. Let's see. Yeah, I talked a little bit about blocking your square. I think in this blanket, you want to make sure that you block all of the squares to make sure that they are the same size. So your ultimate goal with the Wagon Wheel Square is to get it to a 12-inch. I fudged a little bit and got it to a 12.5, but I made sure that all of my squares were kind of in that same range so that you didn't have your blanket pulling in one spot and hanging out on another. You want all of those squares to be about the same size. So blocking is great for getting those stitches to open up, to get your square to the size that you want, and just make it look really professional. I used steam blocking for mine, and I do it very lightly, especially when I have acrylic of any amount in the yarn that I'm using, because remember, that's a man-made fiber, and it tends to melt if you get it too hot. Never a good thing after you've put all that work into your square. So you want to make sure that you use a light steam. I have a handheld steamer, and I just lightly block over that square pinned out to the right size. And then I'll pat it into shape to make sure that I can open up those stitches. All right. So the Wagon Wheel Granny Square is released as part of the Granny Stitch sampler blanket. But there are a lot of other things you can use this square for, and I'm excited to use it for some other things. I'll give you some hints about what's coming down the road with the Wagon Wheel Square. I love all the possibilities this square offers. I just think because it's called a wagon wheel, it kind of has visions of fall apple picking, of being on a hayride. If you haven't done a hayride, you need to go out and find one because they are just awesome. But all of those fabulous outdoor fall activities. So while I designed it to be in a blanket, I'm actually going to be making a pillow, a 16-inch pillow to go with this blanket. You can take the outer rounds of the square, I think it's rounds 9 and 10, the granny stitch and the double crochet 3 together rounds, and just repeat those and the half double crochet rounds and extend it to 16 inches. You can also simply take the 12-inch square and add rounds of double crochet till you get the size that you want. It will still look really great. And make a pillow to go with your blanket. I'm also going to take this square and make just take a bunch of them and put them together in a blanket, put a fun border on it, and I've got it destined to go on my master bedroom bed for decoration. So I'm really excited about the possibilities for this. You can also, if you love oversized scarves, you can make either just a regular scarf. Now it'll be 12 inches wide, and you could put a granny stitch border on it after you've strung together all of your granny squares, or you could make an infinity scarf. Since it's 12 inches wide, I like to make an infinity scarf that's 60 inches long, sew the ends together, and then put a border on the top and a border on the bottom, and then I can double wrap it for extra warmth. So there are lots of possibilities for using this beautiful square in accessories and home decor, all of that stuff. It just adds a really fun level of cozy snuggle to anything that you want to add it to. All right, I think that's all I have to say about my wagon wheel square. I do have video tutorials up on my YouTube channel at MadameStitch Crochet. It's in its own playlist. I split the video up into 3 parts so that you didn't have to sit there for hours and watch the whole thing to find the part that you wanted. So I have those up on the YouTube channel to show you critical steps in making the square. So you have that available to you. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy making this square as much as I did. I plan on making more, as you can tell. Feel free to visit the blog for the free pattern. Feel free to visit Ravelry for the paid pattern. And participate in the crochet along because it is free to you. All right, everybody, that's it for this one. Thank you so much and have a great day.